Hi, this is Jason with Green Star Productions. I'd like to thank you for tuning into my video, and in this one you'll be watching me embed a marbled Heroclix miniature of Odin in a block of resin on top of a wood base. Now I had chosen to do this on ash wood because it's a wood that's closely associated with the mythological Odin. And as you can see here in the video, I'm marking off just an inch off the block so that I can take it out, put it on the saw, and move along from there. Now, I've always had a fondness for mythology and the weird stuff in life, so when I made this little icon, I decided to make it as representative of the mythology as I could get, and it was a challenge to do that in such a small scale. Alright, and what you see me doing in this section, I'm tracing around the base of the figure so that I can just take it out and route it with a Dremel, because I wanted to set it flush with the surface of the block. Here I'm just measuring the base, and it was, about like an eighth of an inch. So it was fun trying to cut something, trying to be precise with something that small, because I didn't, of course, want to chew up the entire surface of the block. And as you can see, I got it perfect. Not bad for my first attempt. I thought I was going to have to cut this 2 or 3 times. Alright, now here what you see I've done, I've just painted the top of it black, and I've put a silver Valk nut. That's another one of Odin's symbols on it. It's just, 3 intersecting arcs. You can see I carried the design over onto the base of the figure so that it kind of vanished the stand vanished into the ash block. Alright, now here I've got the rest of that block. I've just set it on back, trying to figure out a good height to go with. I wanted to keep his spear, which is, I didn't like the one that came with the figure, so I cut it off and tried to remake it. Didn't come out exactly as I'd liked, but it's still better than the original. Alright, here what you're watching me do is thank you Wikipedia for filling me in on this one. I went on Wikipedia and looked up some of the titles of Odin, and just since I happen to know runes off the top of my head, I'm just translating it. Some of these titles, some of them it's Hellblinder, or the Mighty One, that sort of thing, the Hanged God. And I'm just writing this out in the Norse runes. As you can see, the runes are being written correctly from right to left. I'm just writing this on the base. Now I've decided to this is iconography of my own design. This is just representative of Odin's spear, and then his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munnin. So just coloring that in. I decided to try to inject some of myself in. It's not just, I didn't just want to be limited to what mythology had told us about Odin. I just decided to put my own interpretation on it. Now, as you see, I have put this is a bronze Worldtree. In Norse mythology, it's called Yggdrasil. I just glued that to the back of the stand, the high part of it. And the longer I looked at it, the less I was satisfied with the bronze, so I'm just here going over it with a coat of regular old gold enamel. And I'm going to let that dry, and you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to go over it with some alcohol ink, just black alcohol ink, trying to get some of the details to pop. Just doing this with a real tiny little brush, just because I want to make sure some of the details still pop out after it's encased in resin, because the ash wood and the gold are close enough in color. It's like, I just didn't want it to, the symbol to just fade into the background. So I put this ink on. I'm going to brush off most of it, leaving just enough that you can see it. As you can tell, here's the final assembly before it gets cast in resin. Now this is not the way the Heroclix figure comes. I went ahead and I used some alcohol ink to cause the armor's details to pop, and I painted the pants black because I didn't like the brown. And again, I'm not perfectly satisfied with the way the spear came out. Alright, now here you're going to watch me assemble the mold that the resin's going to be poured into. So this, I'm just using a piece of 3-inch PVC pipe and a piece of plexiglass and some super glue. Now, I admit to being a little cautious about trying to avoid resin leaks wherever possible. So what you'll see me do here in a minute, after I put the super glue on and let it set up on the plexiglass, I'm going to take some UV resin, and this is just resin that cures with a UV light, and I put about 1/4 of an inch or so in the bottom of the PVC and cured it with the flashlight so that it would form a nice seal on the bottom. Hey, we got the super glue and we got the plexiglass, and now we've got this UV resin. So it was going to be pretty good at keeping the leaks out, and as you'll see, I didn't have any leaks. There's the UV resin. There's me demoing it for the camera. It's a little hard to see here since it's clear, and so is the plexiglass, but there's about about 1/4 of an inch of the UV resin on the bottom of this. Now I'm just that's just a UV flashlight I got off of Amazon, and I'm just going to set that on top since it's just wide enough. It's just wide enough on the PVC to hold it up on its own. I don't have to stand there and hang on to it. This is about 10 minutes later. Now, as you'll see, I just thought it needed the icon needed something another little note, particularly in a contrasting color. And for whatever reason, I've always associated the color blue with Odin in my head. So I just cut out a little piece of fabric and glued it on, made it look kind of like his cloak was blowing in the wind before I put that in the resin. Now, what I'm going to do here is, again, following my technique for trying to make sure I don't pour too much resin at once, and I don't want to end up with an off-center piece. So I'm just going to mix up enough resin here that I can cover up to the bottom of the base, the bottom of the ash wood base, so that that part will cure first, and it won't float off or anything like that. Now, I had super glued it down, but again, I'm just a little paranoid about constructing this. I don't want to have to waste a bunch of material and the like. And you can only pour about 2 inches of Alumilite resin at once. So I decided to, since it's 3 inches high, I said, all right, well, I'll have to do this in 2 layers. So cast that first one up to the level of the base, and it solved both of those problems at once. Then I'll go back, after this cures, I'm going to go back and do a second layer, and we'll cover the entirety of the figure, as you'll see when I get to the cut card. Again, this is just following my usual process. Just use a really large container and keep spinning and scraping the sides of the resin container as I go. Now, since I realized I had poured a little too much resin, I was going to end up with some extra, so I just set some paper cups out so I could do an experiment. That'll come in another video. I'll show you that film then. So, as you can see here, I poured it to the... So it's just over the top of the bottom of the ash wood base. And I'm just going to put this in the pressure pot overnight and let it cure. And again, this is, demonstrating here that none of the resin leaked out. This is just the super glue on top of the plexiglass. Excellent. So I know I don't have any leaks. So I just just went the next day and poured another 2 inches of resin, covered the entire thing, and again put it in the pressure pot overnight. And as you'll see here, I'm let all the pressure off of the can, and now I'm just taking off the lid to see what I'd ended up with. Now, this was most of an experiment. I've tried to cast one thing in a PVC pipe before, but then it was a problem with what I was casting. I was actually trying to cast an eggshell. Turned out the pressure actually caused it to crack. And I've just been trying with other materials since then. So I went back and tried with the PVC, because again, I liked the shape of it. All right, now here it is sitting on top of my work desk. And I'm going to try, what I'm going to try first to do is just to take the bottom plexiglass off and see if I can pop the resin block out that way. There's me with a screwdriver and trying to get that off. Now the plexiglass did heat up and it does melt at a pretty good rate with this heat gun. There you see I have it propped. I'm trying to keep the heat on it while I'm trying to pry it off, which is always fun. Try not to scorch my hands or anything when I'm trying to heat up plexiglass this way. So it's always turn it off, set it aside, move quick before the plexiglass cools again, and then you're right back where you started. Now it turns out what I ended up with was, as you'll see here, the plexiglass, it melted all right, all the way. But most of the heat was getting dissipated by the PVC and just getting absorbed into the block of resin. So what I ended up with was pieces of the plexiglass stuck to the bottom of the PVC tube. Now there's also some of the UV resin did not cure all the way, turns out. So that's that goop that you just saw me swipe off with a paper towel. And eventually what I realized is there's no way I can get this thing out with the PVC in one piece. So, stealing a march on somebody that on another YouTuber I watched, I forget which one it was, I just took it out with with my little hand power saw and cut it in half all the way, just in one spot. Just needed enough space to be able to wedge my little screwdriver in there and get some exposure and then pop it out, as you'll see here in a minute. And the nice bit is with the PVC cut in just this one spot like this, I can reuse this mold. More ecologically sound, certainly, and a lot less messy. Not to mention since most things I don't cast in squares because I find it wasteful for a lot of these things, and I hope to do more of these little icons. So what I've decided, now what you've got now is just for my own, just to keep myself straight so I know which side I'm going to flatten, because I don't like the way that the visual is distorted with that round front surface on that cylinder. So what I've decided to do is just to flatten it out with my disc sander. And this is, if you saw my previous video, you saw that I had a small problem with the first prototype I did of the disc sander mount, so this is my attempt to correct it. Turns out this didn't turn out quite so well either, but this is how you live and learn. Now I just put the painter's tape on there. The blue tape was just so that I kept it straight, so that I only ended up with that flat surface in one spot. I just wanted to get it flat from the two inside edges of those blue tape marks. I also needed to take out the saw line from where I had cut the PVC off. As you see here, I've got it to that nice. Since I knew I probably was not going to be satisfied with the sand finish, I decided to just finish this off with another coat of tabletop resin. So I'm just doing the gross shaping on this piece right now with the sanding disc, so I'm just using a couple of grits. And the longer I looked at it, the more I thought, you know what, I don't want it just flat on the top. And it just looked kind of like a soup can, so I put a bit of a chamfer on the edge of it just to make it a little more visually interesting. And you see me going in and out with the dog and all that stuff, because I'm got to get another disc, and there I'm chamfering the top there. Take it off camera here in just a second, and I'll show it off to the camera. And I take it off screen, and then I wash it up and get some of that high end, not the high end, get the low grit off of this so that it doesn't continue to scratch the surface when I move up grits. I took this up to a 240, which, considering I started at 60, was pretty good. I went through 4 grades of disc trying to get this straight. Again, I just wanted to get a lot of the deep scratches and all out of it from the low grits. Alright, and here we have it set up on a couple of painter's triangles. You see me mixing up and pouring. Boy, I didn't realize until I shot the video until I looked at the video later, just how bright it was reflecting off of the surface, off of the surface of my workbench and then that roll of paper towel. So You can't really see it in this frame, but I've just poured the tabletop resin over the piece. And all I'm doing here with the popsicle stick is I'm just making sure I've coated, it's hitting every part of the surface. There's no banks or gaps or anything like that, because I wanted to coat the entire surface at one run, which is why I'm using this real thin resin. And I used quite a bit of it on this. I'm still learning the gauge amounts that I need for just doing a tabletop resin coat on these pieces. Alright, and as you can see, sorry for the camera work, it got a little bouncy on me. It's still got some bubbles in it. So what I'm going to do, see, and I've moved the camera here so that it's not quite as reflective, so I'll just pick up the heat gun again. And I'm just going to hit this piece, let it wash over. If you look real close, you can see it wash over the sides. Just get the bubble. I'm just getting the bubbles out. Most of these probably would have popped on their own. I just don't want to end up having to deal with them later, so I figured, all right, let's obviate the problem. And just pop all the bubbles myself. And that's easiest done with the heat gun. Now, Odin's always been one of my favorite gods from Norse myth, and I'm going to go back and do a full mythological treatment on some bits that I considered with Odin, and you'll just see it'll be this video again with just a different audio track. So if you see this video again, nah, I didn't just re-up it, I changed the audio track, but you only have to listen to that if you're interested in the mythology treatment. Alright, now this is the slow approach. I've slowed down the video here considerably so that we can, there's Odin, there's the spear. As you can see, some of the paint ran under the temperature of the resin, and the toothpick I'd actually used to make the spear, the glue bent under either the pressure or the heat of the resin. So it didn't come out quite as straight as I liked, but everything else, from the cape to the sign of Yggdrasil to the even the semi-primitive looking Odin's titles on the bottom, came out really, really nice. I really enjoyed doing this piece. This came out almost exactly like I had in my head, and for anybody else that's done art or handicrafts, that's a pretty rare thing. And there's that side view. Now, see, I do like the magnification you get on the side view. You can see some of the details in his hands and his hair and the whole thing. But I just didn't like it on the front. That's why the front of it was flattened out. Now you see this is just the next day. I took this out after I shot the video and just sanded the bottom flat with just a real low grit. Alright, and this is a nice little fast project. Like I said, I'm hoping to do some more of these. Now that I've kind of got the hang of it, I'll be able to spend a little more time and go over the video better when I'm not kind of rushing through this, because I end up with almost 2 hours of footage that was useful and necessary that I thought y'all should see, even if it was in fast forward. But doing that, I ended up with a very short video that doesn't let me touch on all the topics instructional wise that I would have liked. But we live and we learn. And again, I'm just really happy with the way this turned out. I'm glad I decided to put that chamfer on the top. It's more interesting that way than just looking at a soup can shape that's like, hey, somebody sawed a soup can in half. And this is still proudly occupying a space on my display shelf in my workshop. And that'll be the end of the video. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in and watching this. I hope this was entertaining and useful. Well, maybe not as useful as some of my earlier videos, but I certainly hope it was entertaining. If you're interested in a piece like this or any of the other things you've seen me make, follow the links in the description, and that'll take you to my artistic portfolios on DeviantArt and my personal website. And once again, I'd like to thank you for watching. Everybody have a good evening.